Alright, today we're gonna change the AC compressor and receiver dryer on this 2000 Honda Civic EX. And just to go over a few things that you'll need to do this. New compressor, new receiver dryer, O-rings, and I'm gonna put in a new compressor belt. You're going to need some PAG oil, and then a vacuum pump. You can get it on loan from AutoZone. A AC gauge set, also on loan from AutoZone. And then 20 ounces of R134A. That's how much this car takes. Alright, let's get started. Okay, so I've got it on jack stands up front, wheel chocks on the back, and then next thing we're going to do is we're going to take off this splash shield. There's several bolts around it. Just going to go around and take it off. Receiver dryer is behind this guy, so I think I'll have to take that fastener off and then pry this open to get to it. Before we go any further, I should mention that the problem with this car was the compressor clutch. Can't see it, but the compressor clutch is on the outboard side. It broke and fell off, so the compressor needs to be replaced. But what I've done is I've had the freon removed from the system already, so I can undo these lines. If you don't have it evacuated yet, probably if you don't have that machine, you probably want to take it to a shop to get it to get the freon pulled out first before you do anything, obviously. So anyway, next thing I'm going to do is get rid of that, take that splash guard off, and then I'm going to go in here and start to remove my compressor. And then I'll figure out how to get in there and get to the receiver dryer down there. Alright, so I went ahead and removed the front bumper altogether, just so I can get access to this guy right here, the receiver dryer. This fastener didn't want to come off, so I just went ahead and took the bumper off. It wasn't bad. Next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take the power steering belt off. So you need to undo this bolt and undo that lower bolt, and then turn this thing like this, and then it'll loosen the bolt. Loosen the belt, sorry. Okay, I've loosened this bolt down here. I'm actually going to take them off completely because I want to take this whole assembly off. But you can see the belt is loose, right? You kick it back, it's loose. But I'm going to just remove it. So I'm going to basically pick up this pump and set it out of the way, just to get more room to the compressor. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, the power steering pump is loose and the belt is out. Now I'm going to take the cruise control off by removing these 3 bolts right here. 1, 2, 3 down there, and then putting it out of the way. Okay, so basically power steering unit is out of the way. Sorry, the cruise control unit is out of the way. You take those 3 bolts off of there, and then you have to undo a little connector, undo this little hose, and then just kind of stash it away on the back there. And then the power steering pump, I've also kind of, you pull this reservoir out of here and then just toss everything back there and just kind of set it out of the way. You can see now we have good access to everything we need. There's your receiver dryer, compressor down there. Okay, I should also explain here that you notice down here there's 2 bolt locations. And there's some bracketry here that was for the idler pulley, but I've had all that pulled out earlier, so you'll have to do the same thing when you're undoing your bolt, when you're undoing your belt for your AC compressor. You'll have to loosen the tensioner pulley that's on it, and then get the belt off, and then you can go ahead and remove everything like I did here, or you can just leave it as is. But I've taken everything off, and then you'll see it when it comes back together. Okay, now I'm going to remove the compressor and replace it with a new one. Okay, so to remove the compressor, you have to undo the 2 lines here There's looks like two 10mm bolts. Undo those guys and get the hoses out of the way, and go ahead and plug them with paper towels or something. And then there's 4 bolts in front of the compressor, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom. So they're very long bolts, so we'll have to undo those, and that's basically what mounts it to the engine block. Okay, let's do that. Okay, you can see I've undone these 2 lines right here, and I plugged them. Plugged them with paper towels. Compressor, I've loosened the front 4 bolts. You can see there. Just a little bit of a tip here. Space is pretty limited here, so to undo the hoses, I used that little guy right there. You need something small to get in there. And then to do the front bolts, I used a combination of this guy. And then what you do is you hook it up to the end, and then you get another one, and then you kind of combine them. Let's see if I can show you. You kind of combine them to form a longer tool, if you will, and then use that to turn it to break it loose. Okay, now let's take that compressor off there and put the new one on. Okay, looking underneath, you have this is the compressor right here, right? You have this electrical connector. You need to undo it from this guy. Push that out of the way now. This thing was in a bracket up here. Slide it out, and then there's this clip on top. Get a flathead screwdriver and just kind of pry in between here, and it'll pop it loose. Don't try to get it off of that metal bracket. Just pop this plastic piece so it looks like that now, right? Get the wire off. Okay. Okay, old compressor, new compressor. This is the clutch plate that's missing on the old one. Alright, okay. So what I did on this was I opened this plug and I turned the clutch a few times, and you can see the compressor parts moving inside, and so it'll move the oil that's inside it. And this thing came with PAG oil already, but if yours came dry, you may have to check how much oil it gets, so you need to put in some oil. But this one already came with it, so this one's ready to be installed. Okay, new compressor is in there, and this little wire mount was being kind of a pain, so I actually took it out of that little metal bracket that was on the condenser fan side, so I could clamp the wire inside of it. The way you get this out is you use a needle nose plier, and you have to kind of clamp it on each side and then pull it out of that hole on the bracket. So then I managed to clamp it down on the wire. So now I can put it back in and do my connection. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to replace these O-rings with the new ones, and then dip the new ones in PAG oil before you put them on, and then I'm going to do my connections to my compressor. Okay, I've got my lines back on there. I swapped the O-ring on this guy as well, since I can get to it pretty easily. I swapped the O-ring on the 2 connections down there, and I've got my electrical connector all hooked up. And I'm gonna actually go ahead and connect that connector down there to it. Before that, I should mention that I pulled off the negative on the battery, and I pulled off the ground up here. The manual says to do that before you actually start anything. So next up, we're gonna, after I connect that electrical connection, I'm gonna swap out this guy. Alright. Okay, for the receiver dryer, we're gonna disconnect the electrical connector right here, undo those 2 bolts, and pull them out. Again, plug the lines and replace your O-rings. And then I'm going to go down here, undo this connection, and I should be able to pull this straight down. And then you'll need to take this guy out and transfer it over to your new receiver dryer. Okay, old one, new one. Just take this guy, unscrew it, and put it in there. Alright. Okay, so that sensor was on the old one pretty tight, so I had to get this set up to get it off of there. If you have a bench vise or something, that would be best, but I basically took a scrap bicycle inner tube and wrapped it around there, and I have this oil filter removal tool, so I strapped that on and held on to it while I torque this guy off there. Basically, there's an O-ring on there. Make sure you swap that out. Okay, just wanted to make a note here. The O-ring is a little different. It's a little flatter than usual than the other ones. So anyway, I couldn't find a matching one in the kit that I bought. But when I removed this dummy bolt that was on there, there was an O-ring already sitting on there. So I'm going to leave that one in. But anyway, just something to note. Okay, receiver dryer is in place. Next I'm going to build up this bracketry for the compressor idler pulley, and you'll see something that's probably similar to what you have in your car, since you probably didn't take yours off. But anyway, okay, this is the stuff I was talking about. It's basically your idler pulley, and it's on this bracket with this threaded rod on the back that's used to adjust the tension on your belt. So I'm going to put this back on. A couple of bolts down there. Alright. Okay, it's in there. That's what it looks like. So it's your idler pulley. It's what puts a tension on your compressor belt. So when you first start to remove your belts, what you're going to have to do is loosen this bolt, and then you turn, and then once that's loose, you start turning this counterclockwise, and it'll push this pulley down. Pushing it down relieves the tension on the belt, and the belt will come off. Now you'll find out that your belt wraps around the engine mount that's right in the middle of the screen right now that I'm pointing to. So to get that belt off, I cut my belt because I didn't undo the mount last time, and I wanted to replace my belt anyway. But now, since I need to put the belt on, I need to undo my engine mount, which is down here. And to do that is you need to lower the car a little bit, support the oil pan with some wood. Got some wood sitting there I'm going to use, and my floor jack. So lower it a little bit, support it, and then you undo that mount. Alright, let's do that. Alright, this is the setup that I have. All the wood against my oil pan. You just kind of jack it up until you kind of start to see this mount relieve a little bit, and then that's when you should stop. So now I'm going to basically undo that bolt, and then the engine mount has a couple of bolts underneath it. Right there, one, and then there's one behind it. Undo those three, and like a half moon shape type of mount should come out of there, and then we can slide our belt in. Okay, so I took that main bolt off of the side, and then the two 14mm bolts. What I did was I just kind of pulled it down. It came apart enough that I could slide my belt in there. So you can see my belt's in there now. So I'm just going to wrap it around the crank pulley, and then everything else that goes over the compressor, and then the idler pulley. I'm going to put these bolts back in. Okay, I've got my AC belt around my compressor, my crank pulley, and my idler pulley. Now I need to attach my tool to this top bolt that will tighten the belt. So this is my setup right here. I'm going to turn it clockwise until it starts tightening the belt. Alright. Okay, it's tightened up now. How tight? Well, go down here, kind of push on it, see how much it flexes, and then you can kind of compare it to my alternator belt back here. Let's see if I can see my alternator belt. There you go. See that guy? It's not the same. Maybe this is a little tighter, but I'm kind of just using that as a comparison. But anyway, once it's tight, go ahead and tighten this middle bolt on the pulley, and then you should be set. Okay, I have power steering back on, and the power steering belt back on. Put the reservoir back in place, and my cruise control. So now I'm gonna put everything back together put the bumper back on the wheel, and then I'm going to drop it, and then we will run vacuum on the AC system for about an hour to an hour and a half. Okay, next step is we got our gauge set, and then the blue line is going to go to the low valve, red line is going to get hooked up to the high valve, H, yellow is going to go to our vacuum pump on this side. Then I'm going to open these valves, and then I'm going to run vacuum, turn on the vacuum and run it for like I think an hour and a half. And it's rated at 1.5 CFM. Okay, here we go. Okay, it's running vacuum right now. And the reason we're doing this is to get rid of any moisture in our system. So you can see right there, it's going vacuum on the blue gauge. Red gauge, it doesn't have negative pressure on it, so we can't tell, but it's also under the same vacuum, it's just getting pulled. Both of these getting pulled through the vacuum line. So I'm going to leave it running for about an hour and a half, and then we'll charge our system with freon. Okay, I turned off the vacuum pump, but before I turned it off, I closed off these two valves, so turn them clockwise until they're closed off, and then make sure that that was on vacuum, obviously, and it is. It's at 25 inches of mercury, and I'm going to let it sit for about an hour or so to make sure that that stays where it is, so it, indicating I don't have any leaks in my system. Okay, so I've let it sit for about an hour, and it's still holding the 25 inches of mercury vacuum, so I feel pretty good that it doesn't have a leak. So I'm going to unhook the gauges and keep my vacuum pump, and then I'm going to go back and reconnect the negative terminal on the battery so I can start the car. And next thing we need to do is basically just charge it with this guy, and these guys come with instructions. This one has a fill port on it already, so I'm going to use that. I'm just going to follow the instructions. It's pretty straightforward, and charge my system up. Some of the cans that they sell, if you want to use this manifold gauge set, you can still keep it on there and it'll just charge in through this yellow line. You just basically hook up those cans to the yellow line, and then when you do that, you make sure that these, before you connect the refrigerant, you make sure these valves are closed. But then once you've connected, you open the low side. You always fill on the low side, so the blue line. So when you open that, you'll see the refrigerant pass through, and you'll actually see it through this little viewer right here. So anyway, that's another way to do it, but that's pretty much it. So we'll charge it next and see if we get cold air. Alright, I just filled her in with the freon. It's all in there now. Picked up 20 ounces and put everything in there. Through the low port, see the compressor clutch is kicking on and off, and I was in here and it's blowing cold now, so we're good. Anyway, that's it. So if you guys are gonna try this yourself, be safe and good luck.